I will never recommend a diet for any patient because they don't work. The only thing we can do is work on body acceptance, rejoicing of body diversity, and to nourish our bodies, rest them, and move them as we see fit.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 158 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. I'm happy to have you here. If this is your 158th episode, welcome back. I'm excited you are here as well. So last week we had our meditation special with Jeff Warren, who's the co-author of Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. Jeff has been on the Joe Rogan show to talk about this. He is big time. And he explained a lot about how we can actually bring meditation into our lives rather than just talking about one day doing it. And it's different to what we might think. It's not just, I kind of said to him about sitting on a beach, cross-legged, wearing like a silk robe. But it's not that. And it was really eye-opening and interesting. And he even gave us a meditation practice at the end. What did you think of that? I would love to hear your thoughts. So send me an email, tag me in a post. Have you been trying it out? I'm really interested to hear. Now, today, I'm very honored to bring you one of the women I look up most in my life. You will soon see exactly what I'm talking about because this woman she's just one in a million. Dr. Jennifer Gaudiani, or Dr. G, as she's known to her clients, is one of the only outpatient internists in the United States who carries the credential Certified Eating Disorder Specialist and fellow in the Academy for Eating Disorders. Now, that does mean, yes, she is focused on eating disorders. However, before you go anywhere, if you think this is just for eating disorders and this doesn't apply to you, yes, we do touch on that, but I guarantee you will learn something about this about yourself, and there is a good chance this will shock you with what you hear. We are talking about our relationship with food, what needs to change. This is going to be an episode I know I'm going to send people to for years because this is just life-changing. Now, before we go to meet her, I just want to let you know that Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, is available today, November 15th. And if you take advantage of my opening weekend discount, you can get $100 off the price this weekend only. Go to tinamuir.com/mental training to sign yourself up. Even if you're not racing until later in spring 2020, this course will not only help you with that. You can start it at any time, but once it hits capacity, I'm closing the doors until May 2020. You can reserve this till any time you want, but if you don't sign up before you miss out here, there's nothing I can do. I'm closing the doors. Do not miss out. Go to tinamuir.com/mental training and get that $100 off the price. That's November 15th to 18th only. I'll tell you some more later in the episode, but let's first thank Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode, and then we can get right to this incredible conversation with Dr. G. Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I told you a few months ago how I was loving taking my Athletic Greens every morning. It slipped solidly into my morning routine. So I wake up, stumble down the stairs, put some cold water in a shaker or glass, add a scoop of Athletic Greens, and drink it while I do my gratitude list and journal. Friends, I cannot tell you how nice it feels to have a morning routine that just seems to work. It starts me off in the right way physically and emotionally, as I know my body is getting 14 fruits and vegetables worth of antioxidants before 6 in the morning, as well as probiotics and prebiotics and 75 wholesome ingredients. But I'm also starting off my day with gratitude, which is a game changer. I love that when I'm traveling or not, I can hold my head high with confidence, knowing that Athletic Greens has my back. And now as we move into sickness season, those germs are everywhere. Athletic Greens will build up your immune system so you can fight them off without getting sick every single time. And after a few months of taking it, your body will be so much better at fighting and just keeping those sick bugs away. I can already see that within my body. And I just I actually like taking it. It doesn't taste like other green drinks, which tastes like literally drinking a cup of pulverized grass. But this actually does have a pleasant taste, and I sip it. That's how enjoyable it is. You can get a 20-serving travel pack. That's $79 value free with your order. So go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to get yourself some. You have worked so hard to train for your goals. Don't let sickness take it away from you at the last second. Go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to go get yourself some. Dr. G, I am so excited to bring you on the show to show the rest of my running listeners, the people that listen to this podcast, they've heard me talking about, I've told you this too, how you are who I want to be when I grow up. And I'm excited that they finally get to meet you. So welcome to the show.
I'm totally star-dazzled and couldn't be more happy and grateful to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm really star-dazzled. That's a very excited word, and I might actually start using that. But no, I've told my listeners before how I just look up to you so much, and how I nearly let just how amazing your keynote talk was completely derail me and make me feel like I felt so like I didn't live up to even close to your standards. But then you coming up to me afterwards, I felt like that was the happiest moment of the entire trip for me, you coming up to me after my keynote. So I'm just so thankful for you. And I really am looking forward to my listeners getting to know what you do and having this conversation today. A lot of the things you talked about in your speech really like hit me in the gut, not just because I was impressed by you, but I've told you this, that there's some things we're going to talk about today that I think a lot of people listening may think, well, I don't have any kind of issue with food, but actually they might. And it really shocked me with some of the things you were saying that I had never considered before. But you are very, very passionate about the medical care of adolescents, adults who have this complicated relationship with food in their body. Now, we know that you primarily work with those who need, more care, more attention. But as I just said a second ago, just how many of us actually do have some kind of bad relationship, inconsistent relationship with food? Do you think it is more common than maybe people realize?
Yeah, Tina, I think it's so common. And what's really important to say is that it's not because individual people, quote unquote, aren't doing it right, or aren't enlightened to how to nourish their body. I really deeply believe we have to move away from an individualistic perspective and take a systems perspective, take a societal perspective, because we are inundated in our work, school, play, sports teams, families with diet talk. Mm-hmm. And when it's not diet talk, it may be barely veiled diet talk that calls itself health talk. But ultimately, the same roots are there, that we should be depriving ourselves of certain things, that we should be very careful lest our unruly bodies get the better of us. And ultimately, it sort of does the same thing to our heart and soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people, even if they hadn't maybe considered it before, hearing you say those words, maybe feel a little pang of, oh, like I know I did, even hearing you, and I know I've heard you say it before. Now, when we talk about this, people's minds are automatically going to jump to someone with anorexia, someone who's, working through bulimia. They're not going to, someone who is really in a bad place, maybe at a dangerous level. But I've spoken to a lot of friends over the years, and almost every single person has had some kind of messed up relationship where they feel, well, firstly, they felt like they weren't skinny enough to be considered someone who had an eating disorder. But secondly, they feel like, at the time, nothing was wrong because they weren't at that extreme level. So tell us the difference or lack of difference, maybe.
Yeah, what a great question. The vast majority of people with disordered eating and eating disorders do not live in visibly emaciated bodies. The incidence of anorexia nervosa is maybe 0.1%, whereas the incidence of bulimia nervosa is 2 to 3%, and binge eating disorder is 4% plus. And that's just people who meet formal criteria.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that the vast majority of people with eating disorders, you couldn't look at them and tell one way or the other. Unfortunately, that goes against the stereotype. And as a result, again, within our families, our social sets, our teams, our work, and unfortunately, even in our medical settings, those individuals are missed. They're made invisible. Mm-hmm. And they think to themselves, well, I don't look like some stereotype. And we know that the stereotype is young, thin, white, cis, hetero, able. But the vast majority of people with eating disorders do not fit key elements of that stereotype. So one of my great passions is to try to bring awareness and to shine a gentle, kind light on all of the folks out there who aren't kindly nourishing their bodies, moving for joy within ability and interest, taking care of themselves, resting, being compassionate with themselves. Really, anyone who doesn't fit into that, and no one fits into that Valhalla category all the time, but all of those folks who occasionally sort of rise out of it, they're at risk, and they deserve to know what could happen to their bodies and why it's always better to be reminded, be gentle, fuel yourself, listen to your body.
Now, if someone listening to that is thinking, let's take it two ways. One, someone who has never kind of been in this position, they maybe have a naturally leaner body, and they think, well, no, if this person is slightly heavier, then there's no way that they've got an eating disorder because they're clearly eating. Firstly, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say you are in the majority of opinions in this country, and how grateful I am that you're listening to this podcast and giving yourself the opportunity to challenge that, because eating disorders aren't about not eating. Eating disorders are about complicated biopsychosocial disorders in which, for a variety of reasons, someone is unable to routinely meet their energy needs, to have a relationship with food that is at least neutral and at best joyful, and in which movement is for fun and to further the miraculous things your body can do, not for punishment, not for calorie burning, and that rest is for every athlete and every non-athlete. It's not for people who are lazy. And so I would say that you can never look at someone and tell whether they're truly healthy or not. That's misinformation that physicians promote, the media promotes, and that we each promote together, that if somebody looks a particular way, they must be the absolute picture of physical and emotional health. But we know that's not the case.
Yep. Thank you so much. And we definitely have seen a lot of that. And I mean, I think looking at the celebrity world is a good example of that. You see these people and they are, made to look perfect, even if, a lot of that is by digital enhancing or Photoshop or whatever. But even they, I often find myself wondering like how many people who are in the spotlight like that are actually happy and have a good relationship with food, because it's got to be tough. Like that's a really hard position to be in when you are being analyzed like that all the time. And I would love to kind of talk about the other side of things. So someone listening who is thinking, okay, well, I am in a bigger body, but I just want to lose 5 to 15 pounds. It's okay for me to get to 10 a.m. and be starving, but, I just got to wait for lunch. You just have to deal with hunger. That's life. And then I'll have my sandwich and carrots, and then I'll get on with my afternoon. And I'll probably get really hungry, but that's just how things are. You just have to wait till the next meal. What would you say to that person?
I think you've really described a lot of people. And I think you've described a lot of people who are just in their most, hey, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing what everyone else is doing. This is apparently the way to be well. So I guess I'll do it too. Let's just pause a second and answer that question with the way that I understand the physiology of our brains when it comes to inadequate nutrition.
Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. You hear me talk about them every week, and that is because I really believe in what they do. What Body Health Perfect Amino does specifically. I took it while I was running 90 miles a week training for my peak races and elite, and I could feel a massive difference in recovery. I could tell when I skipped a few days. And if you're trying to recover from a race this fall and you just feel like your body cannot get back to normal, it feels sluggish, sore, just kind of blah after that race, this will help you get your body its life back. Even if you are like me and you're not racing that much, that doesn't mean Perfect Amino isn't going to help you. In fact, in some ways, that's actually the best time to take it. If you're pregnant, it's totally safe. If you're postpartum, it will speed that healing from the trauma that your body is working through, from giving birth to a child. And if you are injured, well, I don't need to remind you that it's going to help you there too. Perfect Amino contains the 8 essential amino acids the body needs to support and maintain its muscular, skeletal, enzymatic, and hormonal system. The essential amino acids in Perfect Amino are in the exact proportions needed for maximum utilization by the body. And I know I'm not the best at getting in enough protein for recovery. And if you aren't either, but you keep getting injured, this could be a massive help for you. You can find out more at tinamuir.com/aminos. That's TINAMUIR.com/AMINOS. You can get 10% off everything on the Body Health website. They have plenty on there using code TINA10. That's TINA 10, 110. Got a bit confused for a second there. Join the hundreds of others from our community who use Body Health Perfect Amino. If you don't love it, you can get your money back.
Let's just pause a second and answer that question with the way that I understand the physiology of our brains when it comes to inadequate nutrition, because this is such the crux of what I use when I'm speaking either with somebody who has an eating disorder or someone who has relative energy deficiency in sport, an athlete who incidentally isn't quite meeting their energy needs. Here's the deal. There are parts of our brain that I summarize as the cave person brain, which are the unconscious parts of our brain that run us as a mammal. It has no idea that it's 2019 or that anything else is going on in the world or what people are supposed to look like, quote unquote. But it has evolved exquisitely through the millennia of human evolution to be sensitive to when we don't take in enough food, because that's how our species survived. We evolved the vast majority of our history in a time of inadequate resources, not of plenty. So this part of our brain had to be ready really within hours to days of inadequate nutritional intake to respond to save our lives. It's still alive and kicking today, and here's how it works. It perceives that you must be entering a famine within a day or two of inadequate nutritional intake for whatever reason, an eating disorder, a diet, a cleanse, you name it. The brain just feels, we're not getting in enough energy. And so within days, much less the weeks and months that some individuals experience, the brain shifts our body's physiology in critical, fascinating ways. Every actual individual, because people of all genders get eating disorders, actually have different ways in which they manifest it. But some of the general ways in which the body shifts are as follows, all with an intention to slow the metabolism, decrease the number of calories you need, and use less energy until you get through the desert and onto the other side. So it makes people feel chilly. And it gives them cold hands and feet. And that feeling chilly has to do with, a great amount of the energy we take in every day is actually just used to keep our bodies at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it says, I'm not going to burn calories to keep you warm. I'm going to make you feel cold so you get into a sweater and we don't lose as much heat. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things. It shuts down the venous circulation to the extremities because it doesn't want to lose heat through your hands and feet. It wants to just shut those down and say, all right, well, you've got blue fingertips. Okay.
Can I just pause you there? What about the people who are listening? And I was one of these who say, yeah, but I must have Raynaud's.
Yeah. What I say is we can't tell whether you have Raynaud's until you're nourishing adequately and your body weight is at a happy place. Mm-hmm. If you continue to get white fingers on 60-degree days, okay, maybe you have Raynaud's. Otherwise, we're going to call it malnutrition related.
Okay.
People's heart rate's slow, just like a bear in hibernation. Their temperature may drop. Their digestion slows. They feel full quickly and they have less of an appetite, which, thank you, Mother Nature. If we are indeed stuck in a desert with inadequate food, it's very compassionate of you to give me a body that then feels full quickly and doesn't have an appetite. But boy, does that make it difficult and intuitively challenging to begin nourishing adequately again, potentially. People can get constipated and bloated. Their hair gets dry. Their skin starts to get ratty. They get bruised and bumped easily on their skin. And they can have all sorts of other complications. And these can happen like this. Mm-hmm. So in answer to your question then, that well-meaning individual who says, my doctor said, or, my mother said that I should lose 10 pounds. As soon as they begin restricting, their cave person brain kicks in. And not only does it change their physiology, but it changes their psychology towards food. The second they say, I'm not allowed to have X, of course, all their brain is thinking about is X. And that's very appropriate because that's how we were built to survive. As soon as someone who has been eating inadequate carbohydrates finally has access to them and drops those rules, very appropriately, they will be craving those carbohydrates and they'll eat a lot of them. And the other thing is, and this does not come from a fat phobic perspective, but when people restrict, their brain says, okay, clearly we're living in a time of inadequate resources. So when we get back to food adequacy, I'm going to make sure that this body's set point weight is raised a little higher, because then we'll have a little extra to spare the next time we go through food inadequacy. And this is why the dieting industry is total bullshit. Because ultimately it cycles people's weight, ending up higher and higher and telling them that it's a failure of their willpower, not an absolute fact of biology. It's why I will never recommend a diet for any patient, no matter what their body weight is, because they don't work. The only thing we can do is work on body acceptance, rejoicing of body diversity, and to nourish our bodies, rest them, and move them as we see fit.
Thank you so much. So much good stuff in there. And I knew you were going to be giving us just gold here and just things that really are going to get people thinking. And, this is, I really want to talk in a minute about, you mentioned not going on a diet, someone saying, okay, well, what's my alternative here? But before we go on to that, I said about things kicking me in the stomach. One of the things that you got me with your talk was saying about the heart rate thing. Now, people listening probably clocked that too. I remember, and I told you this, that I remember at once my heart rate was 42. I think it was 42. And I was like, wow, like I had heard that in Britain we have this Olympic rower called Steve Redgrave. And I remember hearing that once his heart rate was like 36 or something. He was a five-time Olympic champion. I can't remember. That's bad. But anyway, I remember hearing that mine was close to his and thinking, wow, I must be really fit to get that low. But then what you said, tell us about what you meant by low heart rate.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So it's really common when I see athletes who have malnutrition regardless of body size, they need not be in a visibly emaciated body, who have bradycardia or a heart rate under 60. And they say, well, Dr. G, it's because I'm an athlete. Don't you know, athletes have slow hearts. And I said, great. Would you mind walking down the hall and back? And I'm just going to check your heart rate again. Okay, right? So they walk down the hallway and we keep a little pulse oximeter on them and we check it after they've just walked a few steps and back. And here's the key. An athlete who is beautifully nourished, rested, and hydrated may have a low resting heart rate, although typically not super low, as in the 40s. Sometimes when people get older, their heart rates might go lower at rest. And when they walk down the hall, it's like their body is doing nothing because their muscles are strong and nourished and their heart is strong and nourished, and their heart rate really won't change very much. But somebody who's malnourished actually has a slow heart rate at rest to save calories. And when they walk down the hall and back, their heart rate may go up by 50%, 75%, 200%, even if it's not formally tachycardic above 100, that change in pulse shows that they have a starved person's heart, that their skeletal muscle is depleted, their heart is strained, and just the act of walking down the hall, even if they're still pushing themselves athletically, is a strain on their body.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for explaining that. And I think quite a few people will be shocked to hear that because, again, I'm sure many are like me and think it's kind of a sign, like the same as with the period was for a while, not having it was a sign that you were working hard, same kind of thing. And on that note, periods, amenorrhea, I hear this time and time again from people who reach out to me about this topic, that their doctor wants to put them on birth control because that will bring their period back. Tell us about your thoughts on that like from someone coming from a malnourished state.
Isn't that so frustrating? So it's one of my favorite topics, and I'm so glad you brought it up. When someone is malnourished, regardless of body shape or size, and sometimes stress itself can do this, not just malnourishment, the part of their brain called the hypothalamus says, you know what? It is not a safe time to waste calories on sex drive, having sex, for females losing menstrual blood monthly, and for females getting pregnant. And so in people of all genders, the hypothalamus goes quiet when faced with malnutrition or just inadequate fueling compared to energy output. And it stops giving the message to our sex organs to produce sex hormones. So in males, their testosterone drops below 300. And in females, their estradiol level drops below 50. In females, that typically will at some point result in loss of a period, although I must say everyone's on a bell curve, and there are plenty of people out there who are quite imbalanced in their energy intake and output who still get natural periods and think, well, must be all right. They're just genetically fortunate. We have to look at the whole human. And then there's plenty of people who well into recovery are like, oh my gosh, my period is still not back. What is going on? And they're just on the other end of the bell curve as far as their body's sensitivity and ability to heal that. But in the final analysis, the question is, what do we do? First of all, why is it a big deal? And second of all, what's the evidence-based best practice? So the risk for people of all genders is that when they have low sex hormones, they're going to lose bone density. There's two parts to this. Sex hormones prevent us from resorbing bone. Turns out that normally we're always making a little bone and resorbing a little bone. And that's the process of remodeling by which all adults manage their skeletons. When we have estrogen and testosterone flowing in our blood, though, it keeps the bones from sort of being sucked dry or resorbing too much. Then if you're also malnourished, you're not creating bone adequately. So being in a low testosterone or low estrogen state often is manifested by erectile dysfunction in a male or by lack of periods in a female is probably a marker that you have started to lose bone density. Now, for adolescents, this is a catastrophe because from age 10 to 20 is when we actually lay down our strong skeletons. That's it. That's all you get to take for the rest of your life. Then it's going to be that little remodeling process. And then for younger athletes, let's say up to age 50, bone density loss is a catastrophe because it really increases the risk of stress fractures, which pull them out of their sport, whether recreational or competitive. And then for somebody older, they're losing bone density even faster than a postmenopausal state would otherwise have predicted. So it's not good for you not to have a period as a result of inadequate energy intake. The treatment used to be the pill. I cannot emphasize it enough. That is not the right treatment. Every study has shown that the pill does not protect the bones. It does not, quote unquote, jumpstart a period. I like to say anyone with a uterus and a vagina who is given the pill will have a monthly withdrawal bleed. That's not a period. And it may really put someone into sort of a complacent state where they think, oh, I'm good. I'm having periods. I can keep doing this. And not help them realize through the denial, hey, wait, no, something's wrong here. This isn't okay. So good news is that for females who have either REDS or have an eating disorder and have lost their period and whose estradiol is less than 50, the evidence-based treatment is patch estrogen for those under 50 or before menopause. Now, patch estrogen operates in a different way than oral estrogen. It's not a birth control, but it bypasses the metabolism that otherwise invalidates it for bone health. And so it actually works to protect your bones. And you take a little progesterone once a month. So you do have a withdrawal bleed. It's not a true period, but it protects your uterus. And you stay on that patch estrogen until you're nutritionally rehabilitated when needed, along with weight restoration.
Can I just stop you? What if someone says, okay, well, then I'll just do that. Why do I need to gain the weight?
Yeah, that's a great question. Patch estrogen isn't as good as natural estrogen. And even if you're taking patch estrogen and that helps prevent you from resorbing bone, if you're not nourishing properly, you're still not forming bone. So you're still at risk for bone density loss unless you're nourishing well and have proper sex hormones flowing through your body. What's really cool in work that's come out of one of my brilliant friends' work, Dr. Kate Ackerman out of Boston, Massachusetts, is that using patch estrogen in elite athletes turns out not only to be bone protective, but to have memory and cognition benefits. So this is the standard of care. People should get on patch estrogen really within a couple of months of losing their period and being diagnosed with hypothalamic hypogonadism, which is the formal term, and then really staying on it until they're nourishing properly.
Okay. And is that a case of, we're going to talk about doctors in a minute and kind of how some of the information is misinformed, definitely. But is that something someone would go through an OB, a doctor, a gynecologist? Who would that be?
Any of the above. A GP, a primary care doctor, GYN, endocrinologist, anybody savvy on this topic can be the prescribing physician.
Okay. All right. And then just a few other things before we move on. I know a lot of my listeners have been through what I have of getting their periods back, learning to nourish their bodies correctly, getting everything working again. Now, for people like me, and there's many listening, what you just said about the breaking bones, I went 9 years. Is that like, can you ever repair that damage? Or is that kind of like you just find a new starting point and you kind of keep moving forward from there?
Such a good question. You can improve the damage. It might not be fully reversible. So what I recommend is checking a bone density scan at the time of diagnosis of REDS or an eating disorder and get a baseline. Then every 2 years thereafter, you can keep checking to see how things are going. I've definitely seen patients who had osteoporosis who improve enough, both through their own recovery efforts and when needed through the aid of external hormones, so that they no longer formally meet the diagnosis of osteoporosis. So the key is it can improve.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That's good to know. All right. So just before we get on to kind of talking about, the medical industry, how to kind of go about this and what to do instead of, we've talked about the patch, but, what other things people can do as they're in their recovery. I just want to say to people listening that I had a conversation with Dr. G about, when this comes out, it'll be a few months ago. And, I said to you that I was preparing something and you were helping me out. And I didn't want to say in this that I had an eating disorder. And you stopped me and said, I think you did. I'd have to check for sure, but I think you did. And that shocked me. I had never considered that I actually fell into that category. I had always kind of put myself on the edge, even in the kind of way of what you and I talked about earlier. Well, I wasn't that far down the road. I wasn't that skinny to be in that group. So I just want you to kind of, you've said it already, but I just wanted people to hear that, I've kind of realized lately that I definitely did have an eating disorder. And since our conversation, I have been thinking about it. But I said to you that I didn't think I would have been able to recover as quickly as I did and been able to just say, you know what, I'm stopping running. I'm going to eat whatever I need to eat. I'm going to rest. I'm going to do all these things. Tell us why that might not be the case for someone who's also in that situation and is able to kind of make a drastic change.
It's super moving for me to hear that. I just want to start with, you are an amazing human, and I just love you the more I get to know you.
Thank you.
So look, eating disorders each have their own diagnostic criteria. And anorexia nervosa, for instance, involves inadequate nourishment, a sort of irrational fear of certain types of food or avoiding of certain types of food, invalidation of or misunderstanding of how one's body truly looks, a lack of insight into that, and a fear of gaining weight. And that may or may not come with excessive movement outside of that which one performs appropriately as coached for a sport that's often becomes punitive and driving and a burden rather than a joy and a celebration of the body. And that may come with pure restriction of calories or with purging of various varieties. Anorexia nervosa should be the umbrella term that applies to anyone who meets those criteria. Unfortunately, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, called the DSM, which diagnoses all mental illnesses, shows its size stigma by putting two different categories of anorexia. There's anorexia nervosa and so-called atypical anorexia nervosa, which is probably about 30 times more common than anorexia nervosa. And all it is that somebody is not in a visibly emaciated body. In fact, many people who go to the doctor and have, I'm just going to call it anorexia nervosa, are told by their doctor, hey, I think you should diet and lose some weight because I'm not really happy with what the scale is showing me. I mean, the harm is outrageous. Then people with bulimia nervosa oftentimes are in constructed normal-sized bodies or higher weight bodies, and they may binge and purge food, and those with binge eating disorder binge food. The key here is that all of the eating disorders come along with a belief that you're not sick enough to make a change. You're all right. You're okay. You've seen somebody worse. It's part of that mean voice that doesn't allow for rest, that doesn't allow for unconditional joy. It's when my checklist is done, then I'll be all right. Then I can put my feet up. And whose checklist is ever done? So you're so right that the process of recovery involves a profound surrender to recognizing what your body actually needs. You don't want to asymptotically approach what your body needs, always kind of almost getting there, but never crossing that line. You want to say, things have gone awry. And it doesn't matter whether I'm sicker or not sicker than someone else I see on the street. The way I'm living my life is incongruent with my values. This isn't who I am. I have to make major, profound changes across the board, and I need people to help me with that.
So good. And I've had so many people who have reached out to me kind of saying that exact thing. They're so close, but they can't quite get over that line. And they know that it's when, people often say to me, oh, what weight do I need to get to? I'm this height, this weight. What weight do I need to get to? I just need a goal. And I say, honestly, in most people I've spoken to, it comes when, like you said, you can surrender and say, you know what, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. And that when you reach that moment and you're like, okay, I'll do whatever it takes, that's usually when it kind of comes back. And so I've seen so many people, journey right up to that line and they can't quite get there. And then something just pushes them over the edge and then it comes back. So thank you so much good in there. And just one more thing before we go on a bit deeper into this. Clean eating, that's where I really got myself in trouble towards the end. I'm only eating sweet potatoes and vegetables and meat. And, I still had my sweets. I've told you this, I could never give that up. I still ate that every evening. But during the day, it was very much a monitored thing. I ate roasted vegetables pretty much all day long. For someone who's thinking, I just need to eat clean, that's healthy, that's good for me. I don't want to and I was the same way. I don't want to put that crap into my body. So I'm doing the right thing for my body, and everyone else with their slack diet where they'll, eat whatever feels right to them. Well, you're the ones that are going to pay for it later. What would you say there?
Yeah, that's a really important question because it affects so many people and so many people who, again, the intention is I just want to take care of myself. I'm just trying to do right by my body. I only get this one body in this one lifetime. I want to do right by it. It's a complicated question, but I think some of the roots of why this has become such a problem lie in the fact that, at least in the Western world, we have somehow gotten to a state of human civilization where what we consume has greater moral importance as to our goodness than the deeds we do in the world. It's a weird place we're in socially. And so there's so much pseudoscience out there about what's actually good for you and what's not. The term for an obsession with clean eating is orthorexia, as you know, but some of your listeners may not. And the key to orthorexia is that the rules are always absolutely impossible to break for the individual, but they are completely arbitrary. Someone's orthorexia may center around no carbs. Someone's may center around nothing but organic. Someone's may center around nothing cooked. Someone's may center around low fat. In all of these cases, a completely arbitrary set of food rules have been created. And sometimes there are really convincing social media sites or sort of pseudoscientific things that say, yeah, this is the way to fight cancer, inflammation, celiac disease, ulcerative colitis. The reality is that humans aren't that fragile. We are the only large mammals on the planet that can eat an astoundingly diverse set of foods and raise a post-weaned child to an adult. When you think how differently people eat around the globe and still manage to become high-functioning adults, you recognize that by contrast with, say, a whale that can only eat plankton or a giraffe that can only eat acacia shoots and leaves, humans can eat anything. We are the ultimate off-roading, nutritional, digestive vehicles on the planet. And what we know is that for good function, athletic function, non-athletic function, we have to eat 40 or 50% carbohydrates, 20 or 30% protein, and 20 or 30% fat. That is the sort of general macronutrient balance that human beings need. So, for instance, the low carb craze that everyone is following puts people into ketosis, which means, let's not forget, that you are breaking down your muscle to synthesize glucose because you're not consuming enough and your brain can only run on glucose. Ketosis makes your blood acidic. It makes you achy all over. It makes you grumpy as hell. And it breaks down your muscle.
Mm-hmm.
That is not good for athletes. That's not good for anybody. A famous exercise physiologist I once spoke with said it as, a keto diet might help someone lose 2 to 5 pounds, but you're going to feel like total shit while you do it. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super important. So, well, my perspective is never going to make a magazine cover because no one is made to feel bad by it. And the only way that we are forced to buy things as if we're made to feel bad for not having them is that every food is morally equivalent. Eat good, delicious, satisfying foods. If you are in the mood for a cookie, eat a delicious cookie. Don't eat a protein bar. Eat things that are delicious and satisfying, that are well balanced. Of course, it's wonderful to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. Of course, it's wonderful to pay attention to your hunger cues and your fullness cues. But in the final analysis, great well-being has everything to do with not depriving yourself and with satisfying your energy needs.
Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, is opening its doors on November 15th, and I could not be more excited. I am so proud of this course, and hearing the feedback from the beta group who took it early just warmed my soul. Friends, it has changed their lives, their entire outlook to running and life. This is where, if I was typing this, I'd probably show you that crying emoji because that's how I feel, so overwhelmed with pride. So much love that they see how strong they are. They see that they deserve to be spoken to in a kind and loving way, and they are capable of doing anything they want to, and so are you. Yes, you, I mean it. You deserve the best. Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, is a 12-week course that will take you through 16 mental training videos to build those courage muscles, help you see those strengths of yours, and learn how to work through those tough patches without mentally giving in. You have worked so damn hard for these goals year after year, and yet you tell me that your mind is always what lets you down on race day. You mentally quit. So stop letting it be your weakness. This course I created because you asked for it. It will help you get through that and get to race day feeling confident, able to fight those tough moments to get back to the good ones. The only way of guaranteeing your spot is to sign up at tinamuir.com/mental training. There are only limited spaces available, and friend, we are already closing in on that number and the doors haven't even opened yet. I will give you a huge discount on that first opening weekend, as in you'll get $100 off the price if you sign up between November 15th and November 17th. By signing up, I will let you know that the doors are open and you can go get it. And even if your race is not for months, you can save the course until whenever you are 12 weeks out from your race, although there is actually an option for 9, 10, or 11 weeks if you prefer. You'll have 24 action sheets to fill out to make sure you actually do the work to build that mental capacity, as opposed to doing what we usually do, where it's listening and thinking, that's cool, I'll have to try that, and then never doing it. Don't worry, I am just as guilty of doing that too. You'll have an accountability class of other runners going through the course at the same time to hold you accountable, and I will be sending you emails checking in weekly to make sure you are staying on track. Go to tinamuir.com/mental training to reserve your spot. Once the doors close, they will not open again till May 2020. So again, go to tinamuir.com/mental training to guarantee your spot.
My perspective is never going to make a magazine cover because no one is made to feel bad by it. And the only way that we are forced to buy things as if we're made to feel bad for not having them is that Every food is morally equivalent. Eat good, delicious, satisfying foods. If you are in the mood for a cookie, eat a delicious cookie. Don't eat a protein bar. Eat things that are delicious and satisfying, that are well balanced. Of course, it's wonderful to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. Of course, it's wonderful to pay attention to your hunger cues and your fullness cues. But in the final analysis, great well-being has everything to do with not depriving yourself and with satisfying your energy needs.
Okay, so 2 things there. What if someone says, I do keto, but I feel great? Because maybe they do, and I did for a little while. I felt really good. I felt like less brain fog in my runs, or came crashing down, which I did admit, but I definitely felt good. So what if someone does feel good, and maybe they say, well, I've been doing this for a year now and I feel good?
Yeah. For the people who feel good on something like a keto diet, it may just be that they're a little bit of a genetic mutant. Like some people feel good doing certain things that most people don't. And so it's not the benchmark is not, do you feel good doing it? It's, do people who have scientific knowledge of nutrition truly believe that this is the most optimal way to nourish your body? And the answer is no. The other piece is that there can be a moral lightness and sort of high from doing something that seems difficult and rigorous and applauded by society. And so, that's often true when people begin to lose weight. Joaquin Phoenix just was speaking publicly about the sort of high he felt at losing a tremendous amount of weight to play his role in The Joker, and that he had an experience, but then realized that it got really sick really fast. People can feel elated by doing what appears to be morally applaudable. And that kind of elation can carry you into a sense of clarity. I mean, you're basically sort of running around high, but eventually it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then secondly, what if someone listening to what you said a few minutes ago says, you said about eating a cookie. Well, if I allow myself to do that, I'm going to want to have a cookie, and then I'm going to want to have some fries, and then I'm going to want to have this. And if I'm scared, if I let myself go there, then I'm just not going to be able to stop. And I had a fear of this, and I know many people do. What if I just can't stop eating, and then suddenly I wake up and I can't even walk down the street because I'm too big in my body and it doesn't move, and they get very scared you're going to end up on the other end of the spectrum.
Absolutely. There's a lot of binary thinking that occurs when you're engaged in overly rigorous food rules. You can quickly come to think that if it's not perfection, it's disaster. If it's not rigid adherence to rules, it's going to be chaos. And the answer, once again, is that our bodies are kinder than that. And that's not what the science looks like. Generally, people, and I want to be very respectful here because everyone's different. Generally, people who feel that if they have, for instance, any sugar at all, they'll just keep binging on sugar ceaselessly. They're not having a willpower problem, and they're certainly not having a sugar addiction problem because that doesn't exist. What they're having is a very mammalian response to restriction. So if you don't restrict foods, if you allow yourself to have a delicious portion of the things you crave regularly, the power they have over you diminishes. And I see this all the time with my patients who are moms in recovery, is that they say, in our house, we have all the foods. We have ice cream, we have cookies, we have this and that. And my kids' friends come over and go, oh, I'm not allowed any of this in our house. And these children are binging on these foods, whereas my child, who has it around all the time and is allowed to have a bowl of ice cream when they want to, they know their hunger and satiety with that, and it doesn't have that power. Yes. So the answer just keeps coming back to, if you don't restrict it, you're not likely to binge on it.
Thank you so much. So good. All right. So just to kind of bring this all back together, now we've said some about the patch. That's one thing that people can do if they're in recovery to get their periods back. But let's say someone doesn't, they don't feel like their doctor is taking them very seriously, that maybe, as you said earlier, their doctor has made a remark that makes it seem like they don't understand at all. Maybe they've suggested they go on the pill. What should someone do if they feel that they just feel misunderstood by the medical industry?
Oh, Tina, this is the rule, not the exception, unfortunately. I am a Western trained physician. I have personally done harm before I understood what I know about eating disorders, and even more recently, before I understood what I now do about weight-inclusive care. Unfortunately, the way medical professionals are trained does a lot of harm. And I'll be the first to say that I, for instance, am no expert in cystic fibrosis or other certain rare genetic presentations. So if somebody came to me with one of them, I would try to say, gosh, this feels important. Let me refer you to someone who really knows what they're talking about. Physicians get almost no training in eating disorders, and they get almost no training in nutrition at all. The training that we get is often fat phobic and just out and out incorrect and unscientific with regards to quote unquote diets, and the mistaken belief that all someone needs to do to lose weight is to eat a little less and move a little more. That equation turns out not to be correct based on the complexities of human physiology. So where doctors should be asking open-ended questions, not making assumptions based on what somebody looks like. Unfortunately, they do make those assumptions. They've got 8 minutes and they think that they're expert enough based on what they've been taught, and they jump in and do harm. It's also really important to say that in any doctor-patient relationship, there's an enormous amount of power. This may be an individual who holds the keys to your insulin prescription or to your son's asthma medication. So to be defiant, as unfortunately the Western medical complex might say it and say, I'm not going to be weighed today, or please don't talk about my body that way, or no, I won't be on your diet because I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. There is power in the room. And so I never again want to put it on the individual and say, well, if you just advocated better, this would all be fine, because that's not the case. Where possible, I invite people to try using their voices, especially as they're choosing a physician, to go in the first time and say, I'd actually prefer not to be weighed because that's not a vital sign that speaks much to my general physical health. If the physician's office goes, okay, great, score 1 for that office. Sounds like it might be a good place. If they say, no, I beg your pardon, everybody here gets weighed. How dare you ask for it? I wonder if there might be another option. But this gets down to complexities of access to care and privilege. And gosh, it gets complicated fast. So what I want to do at least is to validate the shit out of your listeners and say, you're right. They're wrong. I am so sorry on behalf of my profession. And to the extent possible, keep listening to podcasts like this, or you can read my book and keep educating yourself, but recognize the system has a long way to go and it's them, not you.
Oh, thank you so much. So good. And okay, there's so much more I could talk to you about, but I want to be respectful of your time. And so is there anything else you would like to say to someone listening right now who has just listened to this episode, maybe got some tears for kind of realizing what's going on with them? Is there anything else you would like to kind of finish up with here?
I think it's that we can feel powerless in the setting of the forces against us. The fat phobia and sizeism we see in our society, the difficulties in the medical system, the challenges of just changing behaviors in an eating disorder. But I think it's really important to remember that each of us does have the power to not contribute to the pollution around us. In our own homes, we can be safe in our bodies and not speak negatively about them. And we cannot speak negatively about our partner's bodies. We cannot speak positively about, oh my goodness, look at that actor, look at that athlete. Oh my gosh, they look really ... We can create a home environment in which people are unconditionally safe in their bodies and in their relationship with food. And then in our social groups, we can choose not to take part in the toxic culture of self-denigration and putting yourself down, being mean about your body or someone else's body, talking about food in any way, but hey, this is my nourishment. This is what I'm going to do. Not, oh, I'm being so bad, I'm going to go have that. Mm-hmm. And we can raise children to know that in the entire spectrum of their body shapes and sizes, they are loved unconditionally and accepted. These are things we have power over. And where that's hard and we have access to it, we can go keep processing it with a therapist, but we don't have to sustain that chain. We can choose something different.
So good. And everyone has just absolutely see why I love everything you say. And I just can't even, I'm almost at a loss for words with just how good this was. Thank you so much. Now, for someone who is thinking, I need more of her. You've mentioned a book. Tell us about your book. Tell us about the Gaudiani Clinic, where people can find you if they want to follow along and learn more and just be around you.
Oh, that's so kind. So my book is called Sick Enough, A Guide to the Medical Complications of Eating Disorders. It was published by Routledge in 2018. It's available on Amazon. And it's a case-based book that takes people through all of the myriad ways in which our bodies suffer when we don't take care of them kindly and when we don't honor body diversity. My clinic is the Gaudiani Clinic, and that's www.gaudianiclinic.com, which is difficult. It's GAUDIANI clinic.com. We are an outpatient internal medicine clinic in Denver, Colorado that sees people from around the country and from around the world. And after initial consultation in Denver, my partner and I are able to follow individuals by telemedicine because we're licensed in over 30 states now. And we take care of the medical side and partner with wonderful therapists and dietitians.
Well, Dr. G, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for just sharing this with us, for enlightening us. Everyone listening, you totally get why I say what I say about her. Thank you so much.
It has been such a delight to be on the show with you. Thank you.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Told you, right? She is special. And I think this episode really needs to be shared, to be passed around running groups, to be brought out into the light, to have a conversation about this on Superstars. There is a lot in here that we all need to hear. And when I think back to all those years I went through such a terrible relationship with food where I thought about it all day long. And like if I knew I was going out for dinner, then I had to dictate my whole meal the day before and the day after because I knew I was going to overeat. It doesn't have to be that way, friends. If you're in that place, I know it can feel like it will never be any different. That's exactly how I felt. And I thought people who said, oh, I forgot to eat, or those ones who said that they weren't thinking about their next meal straight after finishing another one were lying. I thought there was so much that people said that I just couldn't see was true. But now I see that, yes, it is possible to eat a meal that maybe isn't the best nutritionally and have no guilt. Yes, it is possible to forget to eat because you're so busy enjoying your life that sometimes you just miss it. And I really thought that wasn't possible, but I promise you it is. And the other side, it just feels so much better when you love and appreciate and nourish your body like Jennifer was talking about there. So let's do what Dr. G said and spread a positive message. Let's show this younger generation, even if you're not a parent, you've got nieces and nephews and kids in your life that see you and look up to you, whether you realize it or not. Let's show them that they too should learn to love our bodies because they see us doing it. Please consider sharing this episode if you found it helpful. I want to just give another quick thank you to Athletic Greens and Body Health for sponsoring me and this episode. You can get 20 free travel packs with your first order of Athletic Greens by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. And you can get 10% off the entire Body Health site. But the product, remember, that I talk about and love, and many of you love and appreciate, I just love seeing how happy you are with it, is Body Health Perfect Amino, which helps with recovery, no matter what kind of recovery we're talking about. It doesn't just have to be running here. But you can get that by visiting tinamuir.com/aminos. That's TINAMUIR.com/AMINOS. Oh, and Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, comes out today. If you are listening to this on the day of release, November 15th, you have 3 days to get $100 off the course. And if you do not get this in time, when I close the doors, when we hit capacity, I will not open these doors again until May 2020. Yes, I know that's a long time, but I want you to be in a class, a group, and have accountability buddies. I want this Facebook group to be flowing with conversations about how you're getting on with each of the modules every week. And I can't wait to hear what you think. The beta group loved the course so much that I feel very confident you will too. If you have a big goal race that you really want to achieve in 2020 and you are fed up of finishing races, disappointed in yourself because you mentally gave up, stop the cycle. Let me help you. I really want to help you. That is why I made this course. You asked me. That's what you kept telling me you were frustrated with. So now I've made it. You can be mentally tougher, but you need someone to help you, to support you. And honestly, you need some skin in the game to motivate yourself to do it because it can be hard. This is the course for that. Go to tinamuir.com/mental training to learn more and get your $100 off the price till November 18th, 2019. You can get all links that I talked about today in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 158. Next week, we have a conversation with Billy Yang, who is the filmmaker who's been taking the running world by storm. You get to hear our conversation from when we were in New York a few weeks ago. Until then, have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.